All right. Well, it is a Monday. It is once again Monday. Mondays sort of sneak up on me. I don't know about you, Mahmoud, but it sure feels like they kind of come out of nowhere. As I said, I think last week when I had Sobi on, they're like ninjas. But here, it's Monday, and you're hanging out with me today. I appreciate that. Good evening. A good evening since you're +7 on me, so it is nighttime. Well, not nighttime. I guess it's still plenty of daylight, but it's definitely closer to dinner than it is to lunch. So
Yeah.
good evening, my friend.
So good morning to you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for
It's
being
a
here.
pleasure to be on your show. I have been following your show for a long time, and yeah, it's good to see you. Good to talk to you today.
Well, thank you, my friend. Thanks for hanging out with me here. We already came up with some things to chat about in the pre-show that I think are going to be fascinating. But let me start where I always begin, which is, so how did you get into technology? What was your path into this weird space called software, and what did your journey look like?
Yeah, sure. Oh, it goes a long time ago, 15 years ago, maybe, or 20 years ago. I started working on 2007 as a
Okay.
software engineer. And how I came to this world actually in my college, I wrote my first computer program, and I was fascinated by how these machines can like learn
Hmm.
from us. So it was very surprising to me to be able to like write a program and the machine does exactly what I told it to do. So and that moment was like, oh, okay, I want to become a software engineer. And so yeah, that was the time where I decided to study computer science. And then I got my engineering degree, and then I started working as a software engineer, I think for almost 10 years as a consultant in many companies. And then I joined Pivotal VMware 5 years ago now. Yeah, time flies
Yeah, it
when you
does.
like what to do. And yeah, so today I work for VMware on the Spring team. I work mainly on Spring Batch and everything. I mean, other projects where Spring Batch is used. Sometimes I contribute to Spring Boot or Spring Cloud and so on. Yeah, so that's how I got into this world.
That's, you hit upon something that was part of my genesis too into this whole space. When you get the computer to do what you want it to do, and that first time that you write a program and the computer responds the way you wanted it to, it's like, oh my god, I did that. And I think that's one of the most fascinating aspects of this space. And I think it's also sort of good morning, good afternoon, Simon. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate it, my friend. uh it is a really creative process, and I don't think we get enough credit for that. I mean, I do realize it's not poetry, but that whole process of, I want the computer to do this. Oh, look, I got the computer to do this, like success. And you get those little dopamine hits as things
Exactly.
work.
Yeah, exactly. And for a kid who is on college and who discovers this for the first time, it's even more
Yeah.
fascinating. Okay, oh, I know how to talk to a computer. I know how
Mhm.
to program it and so on. So the moment you see the computer does what you told it to do is fascinating. But another fascinating moment when you think the computer is doing what you told it to do, but it's not the case. So
Right,
when it doesn't
right.
work, this is another fascinating moment. Okay,
Mhm,
why is that?
mhm, mhm.
So if I go 20 years ago, I had hair, you see, but today it's not the case. So this
Software
is
will
the
cause you to
result.
rip out your hair, man.
Exactly. This is the result of all the debugging sessions
Yes,
for
yes.
20 years, and each time I lose one hair or two. But yeah, I didn't have glasses. Now I have them. So this is a warning for all juniors who
Right,
are
right.
deciding to go into this space. Be careful.
Enjoy your hair and your eyesight while you have it. So,
Exactly. So you
oh,
are
Code
saying
with
like,
Sean. Good morning, sir. Thanks for joining us. Howdy. Yeah, no, it is maddening sometimes, isn't it? And that's one of those aspects of software that I don't know is fully appreciated outside our space. You get those things and you just can't figure out, why is it doing that.
yeah,
I have this one weird little bug in this app I've been playing around with, and I still haven't figured out what's going on. I have this one entity, and only one entity, that when you create a new one, when you go to the page to create it, it doesn't have an ID, but when you submit it, all of a sudden it has an ID. And I don't know where it's getting an ID from, because I didn't give it an ID. And so then when you try to persist it, Spring says, dude, I already got one of these. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I just, I did the silliest thing that would work, which is on new, I just null out the ID before I persist it.
Yeah. So that's the journey to learn how computers work, and so it's a good journey, by the way. So
Nice. So what languages did you study when you were in school? I'm always interested to see what people are learning on, where they cut their teeth.
yeah, so my very first program was in Turbo Pascal.
Oh wow. Okay.
So yeah, I don't remember exactly when, but it's 2003 maybe, or something
Sure.
around that. And so and after that, when I went to engineering school, I learned like other languages, C,
Mm-hmm.
Java, Python, and so on. And when I went to the market for the first time as a software engineer, of course I had to learn many languages to be able to get a job and so on. But I settled for Java at some time. I was
Mm-hmm.
comfortable with Java. I like the JVM concept, like write once, run everywhere, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And it started from there. And today I like it. I mean, I know how to code in other languages, of course, a bit of Go, Python, of course, C, Java, TypeScript, JavaScript, and so on. And so those are the languages I'm using. I've never like used Elixir or other languages, but I mean, yeah, it's today. I think we can do a lot with Java, Go,
Right.
a bit of web languages, scripting languages, Bash and Shell, and so on.
Right.
Yeah, I worked a lot on web development when I first started my career, and then I quickly realized it's not really for me. I don't know. I don't know. Like if you code an HTML button and it works in one way
Right.
in browser A and in another way
Right.
in browser B, like it was a bit like okay, that's not
Oh,
really for me.
trigger warning.
Yeah, but after many years, I moved to backend.
Yeah.
I was always like fond of data processing. Everything related to data processing was kind of intriguing to me, and it's interesting to work on. Everything like stream processing, batch processing, everything related to data processing. And at some point, I had a requirement to process bunch of files,
Mm-hmm.
CSV, XML, and so on. And at that time, I don't remember there was like I was new in the open source space, if you will, and I tried to find like frameworks to do the data processing and so on. And I couldn't find something really easy. As a junior, it was either too abstract for me or too complex, and I always like to keep things simple. So
Sure.
I developed like a tool to work with in the company I was working for. And at some point I said, why not open sourcing the thing? So like my colleagues were saying, okay, that's working fine. It's doing what it is supposed to do. And I said, okay, since they think it's a good thing, let's try and open source it. So I put it on GitHub, and people started like using it, opening issues, and so on. It was like not the best thing, but at least there was something working there.
Sure.
And it started like that. So my journey in open source started like that. So today the framework is called Easy Batch. Actually, it was like an alternative to Spring Batch. The problem is that I don't have a lot of free time
Right.
today to maintain
Right.
it. I'm looking for someone to help on this, like maybe take over the project and continue
Sure.
working on it. But that was the starting point. And like 6 years after, or 7 years, there was an open position at Pivotal at the time. And the job description was looking for someone who is like comfortable with batch processing.
Right.
And the list of technologies there was like Spring Batch, Easy Batch. And I said, oh, okay.
Wait, I know that.
Yeah, I know this thing. Okay, let's try and let's apply for the position. And okay, I got the attention of Michael Minella at the time. So Yeah, it started like that. So I got interviewed and then accepted the offer. Yeah, and today I'm like working on Spring Batch, which is the leading batch framework on the JVM.
Right.
So that's how I started. Yeah,
Wow.
I
That's
think
awesome.
yeah, 2011 maybe, or 2010, I created my GitHub account.
Okay.
Yeah, 2011. It's 12 years ago maybe. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
as
yeah.
you and I
So
said in the pre-show, man, time flies.
exactly. So yeah, and then I developed other tools on the side, which are used today by many companies. And yeah, that's how I landed in the open source world. Open source for me is like a philosophy, coming from companies which don't like believe in open source at the time. Open source was not like GitHub was not like so popular like today,
Right.
and people weren't convinced by open source technologies, and the closed source was like more popular. And but anyway, I thought like this is the way software should be shared and to
Right.
improve it and so on, and I continued, and today open source is everywhere. And
Right.
so I think that was the right bet on my
Yeah, no,
side.
definitely. Definitely. Well, good afternoon, Fuel Snable, otherwise known as Ugly Snout. So Fuel had a couple of interesting comments here. One, I think every developer wants to keep things simple. It's just everybody has a different opinion on what is simple. I think that's a very astute observation there, Ugly Snout.
Exactly. Simple is not easy.
No, it's not. And Rich Hickey has a great presentation on that exact topic. Simple and easy are not the same thing. And I try
Exactly.
really hard to always use the word simple instead of easy, because the easy thing to do is often not the simple thing to do. And
Yeah, and
oh,
it's difficult to make things simple.
yeah, absolutely.
If you want really to simplify something, it's not easy to make it simple or to make it
Right,
look simple, and
right.
that's a subjective like thing. And indeed, there is a difference in definition between simple for you may not be simple for me, and vice versa, and so on. It's a lot of discussions in the software world what simple is, and
Yes.
so. But it's a good like remark there.
It's even more difficult to make things simple and make others agree it's simple. Well, and,
Exactly.
and some of that too depends on your own knowledge though as well, because I look at the iPhone or my watch and I think, well, this is simple. And then my father-in-law was over last night for dinner, and he was asking my wife some things about his watch, and of course Christine, being a business analyst, kept kind of asking, well, what's your actual requirement here? And I realized that, well, for my father-in-law, it isn't simple because he doesn't know what this thing can do, and I don't think he even knows what he wants the thing to do. And so my mother-in-law is like, oh, you should just get rid of everything but the 3 apps that you want, because we don't do apps, you don't need apps. And I'm thinking, oh, Gail, there's so many things that
Yeah.
would help you. We had a soccer tournament a couple of weeks ago, and it was near where my in-laws had been to a game before, but not quite. And so my mother-in-law is like, okay, I'm over here. How do I get there? I said, well, Gail, I dropped you a pin exactly where to go. And she's like, oh, I don't know how to do that. It's like, well, I mean, it doesn't get a whole lot simpler than tap on pin, directions to pin, and then follow the directions that your phone's giving you. But
Yeah.
it's just different mindset, right? Like I got a couple of friends that have their pilot's license, and I look at the cockpit of an airplane and go, oh God, no. And they're like, what are you talking about? This is as simple as it could be and still work. It's like, good point. Good point.
Yeah, indeed, it's relative, as I said. Yeah.
Now, the other interesting thing here is, and Fuel asked this question about companies supporting open source, essentially. And there has been a shift there, because I certainly remember earlier in my career, most companies, I mean, a lot of companies were very suspect of open source, I think because it was free. And so they didn't quite understand that. But the idea that you, while working, could contribute, a lot of companies had rules, policies. No, can't do that at all. This is all proprietary. We own it. I feel like that started to shift a bit. And I look at Microsoft as a prime example of that. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that Microsoft said open source is a cancer. And now I think they're the largest contributor to open source in the world. So it's interesting to see those mindsets move.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why when I talked about 15 years ago, GitHub and open source and so on was not like today. the mindset indeed shifted to something completely different. Like if I compare Microsoft in 1995 with Microsoft today, it's a completely different
Yeah.
company from this standpoint. I mean, from the open source standpoint. But yeah, there is a shift in the mindset. Many companies are today contributing to open source in some way or another. Some other companies are using open source to generate profits and so on, but this is another
Right.
story. But at least there is always like a give back to the community, and that's a good thing. I think it's shifting in the right direction, at least from my point of view. And when I see like Microsoft, Google, VMware, and many other companies contributing to open source, it feels like better than 20 years ago or 15 years ago. And yeah, good to see that.
Yeah, no, completely agree. I think it's been an interesting shift. And Fuel says free is a bit ambiguous. And I mean that is true that you may give away the software. That doesn't mean that it's free to use, right? I mean there are always costs, whether it's even if you're not spending money. There's the how do we use it and how do we get bugs fixed, etc. But I do wish more companies would support open source, or at least let their developers send in PRs and things like that, and contribute back. You don't have to be a full-time, we are paying you to work on this, to still contribute and give useful things back to the community. But
Sure. Yeah, this is the term free here is like up to you to define when you provide your work for free. So you have licenses, of course. You can like restrict a couple of things if you want for commercial use, or completely free. And but yeah, there is always like a way to protect your work if you want. But of
Mhm.
course there are licenses which are more permissive than others. And I think it's up to you to define how free the software is. Like if you want to reproduce it or change it, you have to mention the original work, or this is the free version, you can't use it in a commercial product or something like this, or free as in MIT, use it whatever you want, or copyleft license or something. So yeah, interesting point here. But the problem is that many companies don't pay a lot of attention to this when they consume or produce
Right.
free code. Okay, and with the movement of AI today and how these things are consuming free code, but it's not really free. So yeah, there is a lot of debate now on this topic, and thanks to the person who brought this now. But yeah, it's not as free as we think it's free. So there is always a cost, as you said, and
Right.
we should pay attention to what free means. And if you want to protect yourself with a license, that's fine. If you want it to be completely free, that's another choice. So it's up to you as a OSS developer or company
Right.
who will give this for free, to define how free it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point, Fuel. Yeah, I mean, it certainly depends on your organization. Some organizations are more or less supportive of that. Speaking of licenses, Mahmoud, how much thought did you put into the license you chose when you did your first open source project?
Actually, I didn't even set a license.
Oh, okay.
I was completely new to this world, and I said, okay. Um, Actually, it was a courageous, brave move from myself, because many people are like afraid of exposing themselves on the
Sure.
internet. It's like, oh no, I will be judged on my code. Maybe my code is not perfect, and so on. And to be honest, I was in that position for some time, but
Right.
I said, okay, if I keep this for myself, and I never like expose it, or how can people improve it? How can I be sure that this is a good design or a good thing? And
Right.
it was like, okay, that's not going to work. So
Hmm.
it should be reviewed by other people who I don't even know. And it was like a bold move to take the thing, put it on the internet, and say, okay, this is my code. Please go criticize it as you will. I will learn from it. That's fine. And it's like a double-edged sword. You see,
Right.
so you can expose yourself, and you thrive, or you can also go on the other side. But it
Right.
was a good choice, I think, and I got a lot of feedback, and I made a lot of mistakes, and that's how the thing like went better and better, and it was used in production in the end, and so on. But yeah, I think this is the moment where people like hesitate between shall I go online or no, and I encourage everyone to go there, expose themselves. It's not an issue. We learn from constructive feedback, and people on the
Right.
net are usually constructive. Of course, we can exclude
Right.
other types, but most of the time you get constructive feedback. It's for your good. I mean, you can only improve by contributing to open source, and of course giving open source code. And I think I learned from open source more than I learned in 10 years of
Yeah.
corporate software, closed
Yeah.
source. Yeah, it's not only about code; it's about communication,
Yes.
about managing an open source community, about like handling feedback, about code reviews. A lot of things around code are like necessary for an
Hmm.
engineer, in my opinion, to like to have these having these soft skills is like maybe as important as the technical skills, and that's what someone who is working on OSS should have, I think,
Right.
in my
Right.
opinion.
Yeah, I would actually argue those skills are more important. I think so much of what we're trying to do with software is communicate, and we don't
Exactly.
always think of it that way. But the whole purpose of code is to communicate your intent to another developer, and
Yeah.
the compiler or the runtime is an ancillary consumer of that, as far as I'm concerned, and certainly not as important as the other human being that's eventually going to consume this code and fix this code and change this code. And I totally agree, Fuel, that these soft skills are vital in your day-to-day work. And by the way, they're longer lasting. These
Exactly.
so many of these technical skills we have is so short-lived, and they're in some cases it feels like they last, I don't know, a matter of
Years.
minutes, right? I mean, it's ridiculous how fast this stuff can change. And so I think it's in our best long-term interest to be investing in those longer lived skills that
Exactly.
we know we can use for the rest of our careers.
Careers. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
It-
that's vitally important.
Technology becomes obsolete very quickly. So
Right.
maybe there are two or three things which are like 30 years ago. But like if you see JavaScript frameworks and other frameworks and so on, you have like in a couple of years you have many versions and release, and so it's not like communication or community management or like any of the soft skills who, as you said,
Right.
last longer than technology. Yeah.
Yes, Fuel, you can absolutely get hired for your Corba or com skills. You just may not like where you get hired, and you may not like the projects you have to work on. Sorry about that. But
Yeah.
no, I think that's been another one of the really interesting shifts I've seen in open source, and this is kind of what Simon's driving at here. I think is that you've got a lot of open source out there. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when most open source software was just the software because it was written by somebody scratching an itch, fixing a problem they have, and they just release it to the world. And they're like, go ahead. I don't need any of that because I wrote it. And then we've gotten to this point now where I would say it's almost like the professionalization of it, where people realize in order for this to be successful, it's a lot more than just the code, even it being good code. You've got to have documentation and you've got to have to-do list kind of things to get people up
Yeah.
and running. I mean, I think that's a huge part of it. And again, I think that is good, are good lessons for day in, day out software work as well. I mean, that's the same kind of stuff we should have in the things we're doing on our day job.
Yeah, exactly. The software lifecycle is not tied to the code itself, as you said, documentation, issue management, customer feedback, evolution, maintenance, and so on. Yeah, it reminds me the two popular books, Design It and Release It.
Yeah.
I don't remember the author, but I have them in my library. But
Yeah.
yeah, this is actually those are two fantastic books. And to your point, it's not only about code, but about everything related to the software lifecycle. Yeah, I saw someone talking about the J releaser.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and
That's what Simon was referring to. Nice documentation, Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice
exactly.
tagging.
Maintaining the documentation, tagging, and so on. Yeah, all of these are like necessary points around code. Yeah, and actually, this is it's good that we mentioned that because in your book, Nate, thinking architecturally, which I have on my
Oh, you got one of the rare dead tree copies. Look at
yeah.
you.
So I was,
Congrats.
yeah. So I like the book, and related to that point about I like the chapter where you talk about evaluating technology. So there is
Hmm.
an entire chapter on this, and you
Hmm.
talk about how you need to evaluate a technology to make a decision how to which one to use, and part of these like criteria of selection are like documentation, the is the software updated frequently, the release process, and so on and so forth. So it's not only about the code, but all the points you just mentioned are in your book as well. And by the way, excellent book.
Thank you. Thank you. I
Really,
appreciate that.
I really like it. And yeah, it's an interesting part of software engineering. So, and this is like where people have a hard time distinguishing between programming and software engineering. So this
Correct.
is like programming maybe is around the code, but software engineering is a broader activity where you have the entire software release management and life cycle, which is more important maybe than the code itself.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think we get so caught up in sort of that day-to-day bit of it that we don't understand. And just I'll throw a link up here for the thing architecture. You can get the download. I don't know how. I've got a handful of paper copies. I don't know where I got them or how I got them or how anybody gets them. Occasionally they just show up places. So, keep your eyes open on
I
those things.
got it at Spring One DC, I think. In
Oh, that would make sense. Okay. All right. I can see that.
it was pivotal at that.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right. It's still got the pivotal tag in there. So, that man, that makes me feel old. But so this is something that Jakob and I are working on right now. We've got the sort of software engineering fundamentals kind of stuff, and we've been kicking around. And to me, it's that shift from being a coder or a programmer to a software engineer,
engineer. Yeah,
and understand that there is a lot more to it than just slinging code and where do your semicolons go, that it is a broader concept. And it's certainly not something we teach particularly well in school. In my experience, we tend to gloss over that and focus on these little 2-week assignments and just get the code to work and not on anything beyond that, because it's all throwaway. No one's going to maintain it. Nothing lasts more than a semester. And I do think it's a pretty huge shift that many of us take some time to figure out. Hopefully the stuff Jakob and I are working on will help smooth that over. But
yeah, and
it's definitely a
that's
shift, isn't it?
yeah, exactly, and that's why many people don't actually know the difference. And when you tell someone I'm a software engineer, they immediately think you are just a coder or something like
Right.
this. It's software engineering is a lot broader than programming, of course. And
Yeah.
that to your point, we don't teach that correctly in schools. So
Mm-mm.
the result of this is like people outside think it's the same job, but it's not. Of course,
Right.
it's more than that. It's yeah, but we
Or
have
they
to
they
cope
they
with
they
it.
focused on kind of the wrong aspect of it.
Yeah.
I've told this story a few times. I think certainly when I've taught, I had a developer come up to me one day. This is many years ago, and he was kind of complaining because he's like, Nate, I'm trying to do it right. I get a bug and I write the tests and I try to make the code better than when I found it, and I'm refactoring and renaming variables and making the code simpler, et cetera. And my boss, my last one-on-one was criticizing me because I wasn't turning things around as quickly as this senior engineer. This person was doing it in a couple hours. It was taking me a couple days. But the senior guy's making things worse. He's not writing any tests and he's breaking builds and all this other stuff. But the manager just wants the turnaround. And it's unfortunate when you've got management that is
Yeah,
essentially measuring the wrong thing.
exactly. Yeah, and many failures in projects are due to bad management and not bad software engineers. So,
Yeah.
I mean, of course, I hope it's like rare, seldom, but it happens. Like the case you just mentioned, the junior is doing the right thing, and
Right.
management is still not happy. But yeah, that's maybe with experience you can you can quickly identify good management from bad management. And of course,
Right.
this is also something we have to cope with as software engineers.
Right.
Yeah, and experience can help here. Of course, a junior is not maybe confident enough to say that's wrong or that's the wrong way to do things, but as long as you have enough experience on this, you can confidently say, okay, that's not the way to do it, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you go from there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
No, I think, oh yeah, this is a good point too. Fuel is experience in order to explain and empathize, because it is both parts of that. I think it's on us, again, getting back to the soft skills, to communicate to our management why we're doing it a certain way, help them understand it. Because we have a lot of managers who don't have that technical background. And
yeah,
I'll be the first to admit, good technical managers are hard to find. To find that person who understands the tech well enough, but also knows how to do the people side.
yeah,
I've seen a lot of folks get promoted into management because that was the next rung on the ladder. That was the only way we could get you more money or get you a bigger bonus or something. But they were horrible at the people management. They were really more first line technologists and should have stayed on that track. So it is hard to find that. And, I think it is on us to a large degree to make sure that our management understands it. We put it in terms that they understand. And then also to have some empathy to how hard their job is.
yeah,
I mean, as an architect, I've been in that situation where I have to explain this to people, and I'm taking the word of my technical team because I didn't write the code. I'm not knee deep in the code. They're telling me this is what we got to do, and then I have to go deliver that message and be accountable for that
yeah.
outcome. It's a tough position to be in, for sure.
Yeah, exactly, because you are in the boundary of these two worlds, and you have to play the bridge between them. So you have to understand both the technical side and the business side of things. And yeah, and of course, many companies don't have this kind of positions. You don't have like a person in between. So
Right.
sometimes you have like the most senior person talks directly to clients, and probably they don't have this skill of gathering feedback or explaining well uh, to management. And this is what creates this tension maybe. But it's
Yeah.
good that there is a common language. And of course, yeah, it's something, maybe it's the most critical part of I think of the success or failure of a project, because if you deliver something which is not what was specified, it's like
Right.
completely a failure. I mean, it's
Right.
yeah, it's the wrong way to do it.
Yeah. No, Fuel's absolutely right. I mean, I've certainly seen that instance. One of the worst management decisions I've ever seen. They promoted a very good technologist, and the person decimated a team. Like half the team quit within a matter of months because they just didn't know how to manage. It was unfortunate. And I've certainly seen that too, where these folks try to stay in the tech because they're more comfortable with that than they are with the people side, and they start making technical decisions when they shouldn't be.
Yeah,
Yeah, Simon's right. Being able to do that, translate, and Rosetta Stone is the way I like to refer to it, is very important, and it is that empathy of being able to see what someone else is seeing. And yeah, that Dale Carnegie book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. There's a reason I recommend it a lot.
yeah. I have it also. It's an excellent book as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't imagine ever writing something that is so like germane in 50 years, 60 years, 100 years. I mean, I honestly have no idea when that was first published, but I guarantee it's older than you and I probably combined, and yet it's still, I think, essentially a perennial bestseller for a reason. It's just
Yeah,
amazing to me.
it transcends time. Yeah, it's an amazing book. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's interesting, Fuel. So they renamed engineering manager to coach. I think that is a better way to look at it. The best managers that I've had really do act more like a coach, where they're giving you some guidance. They're also your cheerleader. They're also trying to break down obstacles and, put you in a position to be successful, and hopefully also making sure that the credit goes where the credit's due. I
yeah,
think that's another trait I've seen. Those folks are really good. Oh, hey, no, this is my team. This is, thanks to the strong efforts of this team and these people. And even though they we're certainly part of it. They deflect more than those that are bad managers.
Sure, yeah, yeah. So those are like these coaches are like leaders. Facilitators in the Scrum terms maybe, but they coach you. They help you. They guide you to the right decision and so on. They
Hmm.
protect you in case, like you said, from bad management or something. Yeah, it's a good naming, I think. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. There is a new version. All right, I'll have to look for that, Simon. That's fascinating. I don't know if Carnegie's still around. Honestly, I'm not sure. He might be deceased. He may not be. I don't know. I'm not good at any of that. There's been a few times. There's something I just read recently where I don't know who the actor was, but I'm like, that person's still alive. That surprises me a bit. But yeah,
Interesting.
set expectations. It's not a tech role. It's a coaching role. It is definitely different for sure, Simon and Fuel. So I wanted to circle back a bit. You made this comment earlier about you were nervous and you sort of waited to release your code because you knew you might be criticized. That's such a common thing for all of us. And it's so hard to open ourselves up to that. But it's so important too, because that's how we learn, that's how we grow. And the thought I have while you're talking about that is we all enjoy playing the game or having the live performance, the recital. I mean, that's why you practice, but it's also the part that makes you the most nervous because you're like, oh no, I'm on center stage. I'm in the field. Like the audience is watching me. And it is challenging, but that's the only way we get better is by putting yourself in that situation and seeing how it goes and learning from it.
Sure, yeah, of course. And the sharing the code for the first time was like a bit. Uh, I was like waiting for the result. I was curious to know what people think about my code, and of course, people tend to. I mean, I was open for any kind of feedback, constructive or not. So I said I want the worst case scenario. People will criticize it. I will remove it, and I will move on. The
Right.
best case scenario is I will have something useful to others maybe, and I will learn from it and so on. So the worst case scenario was fine for me, and
Right.
that's how I think juniors should see this. It's okay to get criticized. This is the way you grow. This is the way you learn. And as I said, I learned from open source more than many years in closed source corporate
Right.
environments. Um, of course, this is about code, also about communication. I
Hmm.
remember my first public speaking event was stressing, was
Yes.
stressful.
Yes.
I mean, it's okay. You have to practice, and today, of course, it's better. I'm still not. I mean, uh, it's not like before. It's better, I think, but I still have room to improve my presentation skills and so on. But it's like a journey, and
Hmm.
if you don't do the first step, you will never like. You have to start somewhere, even if it's
Right.
not the best start. But you have to
Right.
start, and I think I'm happy with that decision to start on the open in the open source world. And today I have a lot of libraries being used by many companies. And if I didn't like take the courage and push things, maybe I won't be in this position today.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's good to um, to learn and grow
Hmm.
every day. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you got another chance to practice coming up on Thursday with your What's New in Spring batch here on the Golden Path. So this is not the first time or only time this week you're going to be on the StreamYard. So more
Yeah,
opportunities.
exactly. So Thursday, where I will present what's new in Spring Batch 5. We had a presentation like this in Spring IO in
Oh
Barcelona,
yeah.
yeah, last month. So yeah, this talk was intended at Spring 1 last year,
Yep.
and unfortunately it was cancelled. So I'm going to present it in the Golden Path to Spring 1. So yeah, if people are interested in knowing what's new in Spring Batch 5, which is a huge release, and I am very happy to see it released, yeah, so you are welcome to come on Thursday.
Heck yeah. Well, I mean, it is. Here we go. This is a great comment, Simon. To me, the worst feedback is no feedback. sparring is a great way to grow. And you're absolutely right that's really what this is all about. And I think Fuel a little earlier made this comment that, well, the worst case is it's totally ignored. Okay, that's
Yeah.
not the end of the world, and apparently that's where most of his OSS ended up. So I can appreciate that, but you miss out on that opportunity for growth, and that's the only way we improve. I had somebody, I think it was Spring One in DC, come up to me after I'm pretty sure it was thinking architecturally, and they said, "Wow, how do you get good at giving presentations?" And I said, "You give a lot of presentations, and you're probably pretty bad at it for a while. Now, hopefully you get a chance to do that in a safe environment or a quieter environment." This wasn't intentional, but in the early aughts, I joined a team, and part of my role was to teach the team Java. And so I did a weekly study group with this team. We went through various Java books, and unbeknownst to myself, I was basically practicing giving an hour-long presentation every single week. And I'm quite certain that was a huge part of my own comfort level now with giving presentations.
Yeah, practice leads to excellence. So this is the
Mm-hmm.
the thing. I mean, yeah, of course, no feedback. The worst feedback is no feedback. How can you know if the thing is good or no, or not without a feedback? So a
Mm-hmm.
single opinion isn't enough to judge something. So you have to gather feedback. And
Right.
if, I mean, you should be happy when you have feedback, good or
Yeah.
bad. I mean,
Yeah.
it's what you are looking for when you share something
Mm-hmm.
with others. I mean, so that's the goal in the first place. And yeah,
And it is hard. I mean, there's no getting around it. It's hard to open yourself up for
yeah,
that. But you do have to develop some thick skin, and hopefully the people who are interacting with you have enough empathy that they're providing constructive feedback.
yeah,
I've certainly seen my share of, well, anytime something's anonymous, people will say things they would never say in public. Although I'm kind of amazed what people will say in public. My son had a soccer game on Friday, and with about 23 minutes or so left in the game, the referee actually canceled the game because one of the opposition's players, after getting red carded, the second red card that team got in the game, threatened the referee's life. He said, "I will run you over with my car after the game." And I thought, this is a 17-year-old kid
wow,
who's threatening an adult in a club soccer match. Like, wow, okay, so the things people will say, even when it's like, we know who you are, we have your number, we know your roster
where you
position,
live.
like, there
Yeah,
this is going to end badly for you. There's a pretty decent chance that kid's club career might be over for threatening an official. My son's a referee, and he made it clear after the game that that referee will file a report and that there will be consequences for that athlete. But you have to be able to separate your own sort of personal self, your self-worth from that work product, that material, and just be like, oh, okay, so yeah, I didn't that wasn't clear. All right, I'm going to go refine that. Or, wow, you're right, I didn't do this as well as I could have. I mean, I see that with code all the time. Like, I've been writing this little fun application that I've had some of my friends look at, and I'll be honest with you, I was really nervous the first time I added like Deshaun and Dan and Jakob to the repo, because I'm like, yeah, you guys know a lot more about this stuff than I do. And there's one thing I actually pasted to Dan in Slack, and I said, there's got to be a better way, right? He's like, no. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that makes me feel a little better. But that's the only way is by showing it to other
exactly.
folks and
Yeah,
having them say, hey, did you think about using this technique here? There's a whole different library you could have used here. Like, oh, okay.
yeah. I think the most frightening aspect of this for juniors, and this is how I think it is the fact that we are fearing to be judged personally
Yes.
on the code. So there is like a good analogy with chess here. When you see two chess players or grandmasters discussing a game, okay, so they just played this game and the game ended. One of them wins, the other loses, or it's a null. And when they start talking, like they say, white here could have played this, or black could have played this move or that move. They don't say you could have or I could have played this move. So they talk about the game white and black. So it's the same for code. When you see some code, people are frightened, saying your code is doing that and this. But if you say this part of the code is not good, or maybe can be refactored in that way, so it's completely uncoupled or detached from your person. It's
Right.
yourself. So you start like talking about the code in an abstract way.
Right.
And the problem with many people is that they are afraid of being judged personally on the code
Yes.
they
Yeah.
share. And this is maybe, if you have this ability to like make abstraction from the person who wrote that code, it completely changes the way code
Mhm.
reviews are done and so on. And I tend to use that abstraction as much as I can when I review code. I say the code you shared is maybe can be refactored in that way. I don't say your code or my code or your version.
Right.
I completely remove this like personal pronouns from the discussion,
Right.
and this helps in like moving things forward. And people don't take it personally when you say the code shared here or something like this. You got the point.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, Sean makes a fantastic point here. There's a power in that vulnerability, and Fuel. I agree too. It's hard to separate yourself from your work because we do put an awful lot into our code. Simon made this comment very early on, where it's, if I can find it here, about how with software we have this tendency to get into the flow state where, like, oh my god, I can't believe 3 hours just disappeared, and it's absolutely right. But I do think that that's part of why we get so caught up in this, because it is a reflection of us and our work. And okay, well, hey Glenn, how you doing? Glad you're joining us here. What tone do you read the review? Try not to read it in a critical tone, but more neutral and helpful. And that's really what we're trying to do. Is I'm trying to help you get better. And I think Fuel, again, absolutely right. We look at this as, oh my god, this is terrible, which means, well, I must be terrible. No, there's just a better way to do it, and you didn't know it until we taught it to you. This is the other part of it, is none of us are born knowing how to write code. None of us are born knowing how to use this library. You got to learn it, and none of us knows all of it. That's the other thing. And so you did one way, and maybe you did a brute force approach because you didn't know the library had a function to do this. And you don't know that until you get an opportunity to poke around in it. And this is part of what I've been doing, as and Glenn has also helped me with this application. And bless your heart, Glenn, bless your heart.
hi Glenn,
But
thank you.
but there's all these things where, until we've taught it to you, how could you know, right? I mean, sports are like that. I've thought about this before. When my kid was really little, he played baseball. It's all arbitrary whether you run to first or third, and not why is first the one on the right and not the one on the left? It's all arbitrary. So if you don't know, or like tennis, we were talking about tennis in the pregame, the scoring for tennis is inscrutable until you know what it is. We don't start 0-0, and we don't go up by 1. We don't even just go up by the same number every time, right?
Each time.
It's arbitrary. So how could you take someone who's never seen tennis, never played tennis, and say, well, you know the rules of tennis, right? How could you?
Yeah, it's impossible indeed.
Yeah, for everything there is a first time. Absolutely. Fuel's right. Good, bad. It's pretty subjective, isn't it, when it comes to
like
code?
simple and complex. Yeah, it's the same thing. You should be at the right level of abstraction
Right.
to make a good like decision about. Yeah, it's subjective indeed. And
Yeah.
I mean, the point is to not take any feedback as personal. I think don't take it personally, and this helps removing a lot of fights and tension in code reviews. So as soon as you remove it's not easy. I saw someone saying it's not easy to don't to what was the comment? I don't find it.
Well, I mean, there's definitely,
it can be hard for people to separate themselves from the code. Yeah, I mean, okay, that's code I wrote personally, but now we are talking about the code there,
right.
independently from who wrote it. It could be another one. That's the subtle thing. I think you just need to during the code review just try to don't put people there, and
Right.
at least how this is how I see it, and this helped me a lot in the past. And the best analogy I think is chess games. When you
Yeah.
see two grandmasters, as I said, they don't talk about person. They don't black here in this position, black or white could have played this move or that move, and that's how they talk and
Hmm.
analyze games.
Well, and I think the other important part of that, and this is something I've talked to my son about a lot, is you're going to make mistakes. You just got to learn from it. You got to take that lesson, learn it, and don't make that mistake again. But you can only beat yourself up for so long before it becomes unhealthy, and you've got to be able to let that go. I mean, every one of us has made countless mistakes. It's hopefully you're not making the same mistake again and again and again and again. That's a problem,
Yeah, that's an
so you got
issue.
to
Yeah.
learn from it. But it is hard to that. So Sean has another example of this that. Oh, fantastic, Sean. Yes, KCDC is already this week. It's amazing to me that we've already hit June. So I'm excited and looking forward to seeing you, Sean. I think I get in Wednesday, if memory serves, and I'm still refining the talk. Absolutely. I mean, that's how we get better at any of this, is by showing it to people. What can I do better? And as that creator, you've also got to be able to interpret people's comments and understand which ones are worth your time and which ones aren't. And so it isn't always, you don't always have to take every single thing someone says and implement it immediately. You also have to digest it and go, oh, okay, I see what you're saying, but this is why I did it this way.
Yeah. If you give some context and you explain why you made that decision, or why you won't accept that suggestion, if you go in a constructive way, I think people are they can understand, and they can accept that. And there is like a very good like section in your book, actually, which is related to that. It's the hammer versus the ninja.
Yeah,
Probably you remember that. So
I
if
do.
you, yeah, if yeah, I thought you wrote the book.
It's one of my favorite stories. I tell it a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah. You told me I feel like old when you saw this one. But anyway, I think the point is very very good, because the ninja like is able to convince you with that suggestion is their idea, as not like
Hmm.
with the hammer approach, where it's like that and that's it, and I am the the architect or
Right,
something like this.
right.
So if you have this skill, which is it's very important, and sometimes you just convince people that they are wrong just by asking a couple of questions, or
Yeah.
without even like telling your opinion on the point. And
Hmm.
this is a very very great skill to have, and yeah, I'm practicing it even with also outside work.
Of
But it's
course.
good if you win arguments with this approach, with the ninja approach. So I hope people will be curious and go and see that section in in your book to have more examples. But yeah, it's a
It,
good way.
if you want to see what he's referring to, you can go grab it from us. It's free. Go ahead, download it. The paperback copies are a very different story. I don't know how I get my hands on those if you want to actually get a dead tree version, but at least the e version is pretty easy to get your hands on. But so Sean said, did somebody say ninja? Oh yes, all the time. And that's an influence thing, right? And that to me is so we talked about coder to software engineer. To me, that's the step that takes you into senior engineer, architect, tech lead, principal engineer, is that ability to influence. And that's that realization that hopefully most of us encounter earlier in our career of, gee, if I want to really be good at this, it isn't just about the technical skills. It is about these soft skills. It is about the interpersonal skills. And I think sometimes we dismiss that as, well, it's soft. I only want to learn hard things. And then you wonder, geez, how come these other people keep getting promoted and I don't? It has something to do with that, because so much of what we do is, I need to convince my boss this is the right thing to do, or I need to convince her boss that this is the right thing to do.
Yeah,
And that's the challenge. It isn't, the slinging code part is relatively easy.
yeah, indeed. And it's I think soft skills are most more difficult to to improve than technical skills.
Yeah.
Technical skills, you read a book, you write a couple of libraries or code, and you are good at it.
Yeah.
Communication is not the same thing. Giving, like you said, a presentation is not the same thing. Convincing
Correct.
your boss, having good arguments, and so on, it's not the same thing. You don't have more practice. I mean, more opportunities to do this than having your code in your on your computer and you are alone and you can code and you become good at code. It's not the same. So it's more difficult to have these skills than technical
Yeah.
skills, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So Sean talks about a talk he does on going from dev to cloud architect, and it's all about responsibility. We should talk about that this week, Sean.
Yeah.
I think there's some interesting
Accountability,
things there.
responsibility. Yeah.
Right. Right. Absolutely. So yeah, at some point we reach our maximum performance, single core maxed out. Yeah, no, you're not wrong, Fuel. I mean, there's only so much you can do from a technical perspective. Eventually, there's only so many things you can learn in your language of choice, your framework of choice, and if you want to keep expanding, then you better do that by soft skills and helping others. I mean, that's a huge part of this too, is being able to reach your hand down, because we all got help along the way. We all had mentors, whether they were official or not, informal or not. And I think that's, especially as we get older, that's part of our duty, is to turn around and help that next generation, as they make that transition, and give them that constructive feedback.
Yeah, sure. And also your community. I think if you have an OSS, since we are talking about open source, I mean, it's I don't see it like I see it like a duty to help the community around. So if you don't have that way of thinking, if you say, okay, I will do my job and that's it, if I don't help other people, if I don't help my community, my users, and so on, as like an OSS developer, your tool will die, or it will like a big part of my job, like in at VMware, is helping our community customers,
Mm-hmm.
helping people on Stack Overflow, I mean on GitHub discussions, internally on Slack, and so on. Yeah, and this is how you keep your project alive, and it's a big part of the life cycle also of an open source project, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's an
Yeah,
important. Well,
Glenn makes a good point too, that it's a really good way to find a job you'll love, because you'll find these jobs at user groups, conferences, in this community, helping out on Stack Overflow, writing some documentation, doing some, sending in a PR and a fix. That's something Glenn and I, and I think even Sobi and I talked about this, but a lot of times one of the best contributions you can make to a project is by helping with the documentation or helping with the tutorial or something like that. And I think people always think, well, my code's not good enough. Yeah, but that's not the only way to give back.
yeah, sure. So, and it's easier than code. You can like fix typos,
Right.
provide some additional samples, improving the wording of things. Those are easy ways to get into open source, and people tend to like think that OSS contributions are only about bug fixing or features, or
Mm-hmm.
but no, it's not only about that.
Mm-hmm.
Documentation, of course, tutorials, even the README. I mean, anything that can help improve the project in a way or another. So yeah.
Yeah, Fuel, I don't think ChatGPT has quite replaced all of us yet. Maybe someday in the future. Although who knows? Maybe we're all just living in a simulation from a ChatGPT, learning experience. I have no idea, but well, let's switch gears ever so slightly here to wrap up. We were talking in the pre-show a bit about sporting events and whatnot. And hey, thanks, Sean. Thanks for joining us. Have a good week. We'll see you shortly. Drive safe up to KCDC. We were talking about this a bit in the past here, but so we've got July coming up, which in your part of the world means the Tour de France. And of course, that for some reason is the one event I have to pronounce with a French accent. I don't know why. Those are just the rules. And we discussed that a little bit in the pre-show, but you also said you recently went to the French Open. So talk to me about that experience. That had to be pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool because it's like once a year, and it's
Yeah.
a very known open. You have like stars
Grand
worldwide,
Slam.
yeah, Grand Slam, worldwide stars, and it was an opportunity to go and attend to the semifinals and finals. It was a big event. So yeah, I like tennis, and it was a good opportunity to see people playing in real time, and it's my first time actually.
Excellent.
And yeah, so in France we have like Tour de France, as you said. So this is for cycling, tennis, Grand Slam of Roland Garros, and we also have the Formula One in Monaco in the south. Those are big events. I like when there is like a big event like this. I like to go and see it live. It's not always the case, but this year I chose Roland Garros. I never been in Tour de France. It's a bit far from where I live, but yeah, it's a bit different. It's a bit different experience than a tennis match because you
Right.
go there, you wait for hours, and then they just pass for
They
30,
just go by
for
in
30
a
seconds,
blur.
and that's over. So
Right.
it's not like a tennis match where you are there for hours and you enjoy the show, and
Right.
it's a different ambience. So
You can go get a snack and come back to your seat.
exactly,
Yeah. Yeah. It's
so
very
you can
different.
take a photo with the players and
Right.
so on.
Right.
So yeah, that's maybe the only reason why I never attended Tour de France live. But I follow on the news, on the
Sure.
television. Yeah, but it's still a big event indeed.
Right. Well, I always think this is a really fun stretch if you're a sports fan because and we have the U.S. Open just wrapped up in golf. We've got the Open Championship coming up. We've got the Tour de France coming up. We've got just all these major sporting events. In an Olympic year, it's even crazier because you throw the Olympics into the mix, and there's lots of stuff that you can immerse yourself in. But I do think that's a lot of fun. So I agree with you. I think it would be interesting to go to the Tour de France, but I also think it would be weird to. I mean, I guess there is the caravan or whatever that comes through first, giving away lots of stuff, and I guess that's cool. But by the same token, it's a lot of standing around waiting for folks to ride by you very fast on their bikes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I guess the one nice thing is you can get very close to them and it's free. There's no ticket price since it's just the side of the road somewhere, and you just have to get there before they close everything down. But well,
You have
hello,
to
Praneeth. Thanks for joining.
early to have a spot and to
Right, right.
yeah.
Fantastic. Well, it's the bottom of the hour here. I guess I should say the top of the next hour. And I know it's late for you, so I don't need to continue rambling on here. I will say that we're both going to be in Vegas here later this year. So I'll get a chance to see you in the flesh at Spring One at VMware Explorer in Las Vegas, August 21 through the 24th. So if you want to see us there, are you going to do a Spring Batch presentation or something different at Spring One?
No, not a Spring Batch presentation this
Okay.
time. The session at Spring One this year will be with the Spring Integration Lead,
Oh, cool.
Artem. So it's a joint session. We will be talking about like anything related to, of course, batch and integration. But it's an open session, like it's an Ask Me Anything session.
Oh,
So
nice.
people can come. We will be ready to answer any question you have about batch integration or data processing in general. So yeah, it would be, I think, a great opportunity to talk to the leads, and yeah, if you have any question, we will be there for that.
I think that's a great point. I think that's one of those things that gets lost a bit when we talk about conferences, but especially an event like Spring One, where we get so much of the community together, this is a great opportunity to talk to the people who work on the code directly. And if you've got questions, if you're curious how something works, this is your chance to get that answered.
Exactly. So actually, when we give regular talks at conferences, we have like 1 hour or less sometimes, and it's only a few minutes at the end of the talk where you can ask questions.
Right.
Here is the other way around. We are here for 1 hour, and you can ask any question you have. You can suggest ideas. You can talk about what's coming next. You can share your feedback, how we can improve things. All of this is like an open-ended session, and yeah, it will be related to data processing, batch, and streaming. So both leads will be there, and
heck yeah,
yeah,
nice. And so
looking forward to it at Vegas this year.
Glenn will be there, so we got that going for it. And thanks, Simon. Appreciate hanging out with us. And then, well, yeah. So Glenn, this is something you and I've talked about a lot. It's the hallway track, right? I mean, that's a huge part of what I was trying to do with this series was to have this kind of interaction that I would normally have in an event, except do it live, in front of a, do we call it a studio audience? I guess in front of a, virtual audience. But yeah, Glenn's right. I mean, getting coffee, grabbing lunch, that's where you really have, I think, some of the best interactions. And yeah, absolutely, Simon. Watching the talks is one thing, and there's value in that for sure, but it's that interaction. It's being able to ask that question. It's being able to exchange contact information, or who knows what kind of stuff happens there if you're paying attention. But to me, the hallway track is the real value and the thing that we missed so much during the pandemic.
Exactly, and networking and so on. And
yeah,
I'm always happy to see. Sometimes I meet contributors during conferences and people I only know by name on Stack Overflow or on GitHub. And when you meet the person in person, and it's that person, and it's great. I mean, to know contributors, and also for them to talk to the people who work directly on the code, as you said. And
right,
it's beneficial in both sides, and it's a win-win moment there. So
so come.
It'll be a pleasure also to meet you in person, Nate. So I think it will be the first time, even though I was like following your show for a long time. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Well, and as we talked in the pre-show, I guarantee our paths have crossed. I mean, that's one of those things that I find really interesting about our space. Is it is a small universe, and I'm constantly amazed at how many times you overlap with people without realizing it. Or you've been in, I had that conversation with somebody where we realized we were both in the same talk at the same time and didn't even know it. And that kind of stuff happens a lot in this industry. And I think there's something to be up for that. And Glenn, I'm gonna have to give you a hug next time I see you, because it's been, well, actually I got to see you in May, so it wasn't that long ago. I'm looking forward to KCDC because a good chunk of my team will be there, and so that will be good to get to bond with the fam again. And that's what I look forward to at these events, is seeing all the folks I don't get to see as often as I'd like. So. Well, Mahmoud, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I know it's good. I'm starting to eat into your evening, and I do appreciate you hanging out with us. And again, come see us live. We'll be in the same meet space here at Spring One in August. So don't be shy. Come up and ask for a hug, a selfie, whatever. We're all pretty approachable. Oh, Glenn's gonna buy coffee. It's gonna be a big cup of coffee then, Glenn. I might have to get the Super Turbo Max or something. We'll see. Give me the Grande Extra Vente or something.
Yeah, so thank you for having me. It's really a pleasure to be on your show, and it was great to talk about everything we talked about. So thank you very much for you, and hopefully to see you soon in Vegas. And thanks to everyone who joined us.
Great interaction today. I appreciate everybody. Maybe the earlier start time is helpful. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'll have to explore that for the future. But thank you, Mahmoud. I really appreciate it. And we got into some really cool stuff. I really appreciate it, my friend.
Thank you.
Cheers. Well, we'll see everybody in a couple weeks, and so what kind of trouble it gets us into. But until then, have a great week, everybody.
Yeah.